Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Training Unleashed. We're going to have a great episode. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to be talking about peak performance. It's great. We have a great guest. Before I introduce them, though, I want to thank my sponsors, C-Suite TV and C-Suite Radio, and remind everyone we are now on YouTube. You can go to Training Unleashed Network, and you can subscribe. So our guest today is Brad Federman. He's the CEO of Performance Point, and I have known Brad for 15 years. And Brad is one of the brightest, sharpest people I've ever met. Because of that, I'm going to start with an interesting and super tough question. Why do people care about culture? Isn't it just foo-foo stuff that people think they're getting a lot out of, but just cause problems in the workplace? Shouldn't people just get down and really just work? And this soft, filthy stuff doesn't really work.
Wow, that's a good question. And I would say that if you were here, if you were talking to me about this 20, 30 years ago, I'd have a different answer. But the world has changed, not just because of COVID, but because of technology and because of generational differences. The truth is, we used to have a hierarchy and a set of rules that drove everything we do. Today, the hierarchy is dying. It's more about networks and connections and relationships. And we're also different with an individualistic kind of spirit that goes through our society and our workplaces. And the truth is, there's nothing that holds us together and binds us together. And that's what culture does. It is a vehicle by which people have a shared set of norms, values, behaviors with systems that support it so that we can work more efficiently and more effectively together. It is also a stabilizing force because we have more change in our lives today than ever before. And culture allows us to have some sense of stability in our lives where we lack it.
So what I'm hearing from you is culture doesn't matter at all. Just joking. So what I'm hearing from you is that culture is sort of the cement that kind of brings the company together and holds the company together. That's really what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And one thing I would say to the audience, and I think this is important, every company has a culture.
Whether they like it or not, whether they know it or not.
Exactly right. And you can plan for it and build the one you want, or can have it happen. When it tends to happen, it tends to happen because there are a few people that dominate and create generally not good culture. So my first question to you is, how do people know what their culture is?
Well, you can tell what your culture is from the way people interact with one another, the way decisions are made, rituals, celebrations. Those will all tell you a lot about your culture. It won't tell you what your culture should be, though. And I think there's a big difference. To really focus on what your culture should be, you should be thinking about why do you exist? Who do we serve? What is our brand promise? And how consistently are we getting that to come true? Because your culture, your customer experience is directly influenced by your culture. And you can't make that happen unless you have the right culture to support it.
Well, I think that's so true. And I think a lot of times companies not just only skip culture, but they don't necessarily even think about who their customer is, how do they serve their customer, or those basic things. Could you maybe share with us maybe a case study or a client experience of, this is what the situation is, and this is what they found, this is what they did, and what the result was?
Sure, I'll give you one that we're working with right now. Won't share their name because I haven't gotten permission to do that, but I'll share their circumstances. It was a manufacturing and logistics company, and and they had about 15 different companies actually that all came together. One was through a merger, large merger, and the rest were through acquisitions. Truth is that they had about 15 different cultures, 15 different ways of doing things, but they all had to function as one.
The Learning Network was the merger of 5 learning companies together.
Yeah,
So
all right.
as I'm listening to you, I love the fact your story is about 15 companies because I thought 5 was hard.
Yeah,
Although great management team here, really great job working on culture. And culture was a foundation of why my company, which became part of the Learning Network, even joined. So please keep going, but great topic.
Well, sure. Everything was difficult, it was hard. There were different ways of doing things in each company. If I had to cross boundaries, knowing how to do that, who to talk to was difficult. Typically, you found people not always getting along. There was friction. They were using different systems that didn't talk to one another. You had just it was a grind to get things done, right? And they knew they had to make a switch, right? And so they were servicing clients in spite of themselves. What do I mean by that? I mean, they would do whatever it took to make clients happy, to meet customer needs, but the effort that took was enormous, too much. So they decided to go to work through a culture. They did it by themselves originally, and the problem was that every time they went to change a culture, each company would look at another company and say, "You're trying to win. You're trying to make us lose," right? And it became this competition of whose culture would survive and whose culture would die. So they came to us and they asked for help. And the very first thing we did was we said, building it around a leader is a mistake. Leaders come and go, and it creates whiplash for your employees to constantly have to readdress a new leader. Doing it around employees is great to a point, but they come and go, and they don't always think about what's good for the business. So while we want to involve them, where should we start? We should start with our customers in mind. And so we went out and talked to their customers, did focus groups, surveys, net promoter scores, collected data to find out what was really going on. Excuse me, gosh, I've got a cough with their customers. And the information we got was rich, powerful, and gave us real context about why customers worked with them, what their brand promise was, when it was happening, when it wasn't happening, and what was the impact of that. Then we went internally to employees and we asked about their engagement, what was happening inside, and we asked them about meeting these customer needs, this brand promise idea. And we tried to find out internally what was working and not working to meet customer needs and how it impacted the employees. And based on putting all that data together, we were then able to say, here is your secret sauce, right? Here's what your culture should look like. Here's what what you can build on that are strengths within some of the companies. And here's some new things you need to be thinking about if you really want to make this happen. And put together values, winning behaviors. It's really a nice model built around their business, not around a person. And the employees love it because it wasn't about somebody winning or losing. It was about growing the business, providing them job stability and security by making customers happier, right? Without killing us, but making our lives actually a little better in the process, right? We have a better work environment. Our customers are happier. This all makes sense, right? So we removed the battle.
So, Brad, what I'm hearing is you took down all the barriers between the companies by focusing on the customer. And
Absolutely.
one company didn't win, the customer won,
Correct.
and everyone gravitated to the new culture versus gravitating to somebody else's culture.
That's
Yeah,
absolutely correct. And in fact, we call it an outside in strategy. You define your culture from the outside in.
yeah, makes great sense.
Yeah. Now, after that, you've got to then get the company to adopt it, right? And so once it was defined and it was approved and everybody was behind it, we first met with senior leadership. We made sure they not only approved it, we educated senior leadership in the new culture. So they would not only be behind it, but they could truly support it and try and live it. From there, we found 40 champions, and we trained 40 champions on the new culture and what culture was, why it's important, and how it would impact their business.
How many? You got 40. How big was the employee pool?
Employee base is about 2,000. We certified 20 trainers to be able to train their entire company on the new culture, but also again, what a culture is, why it's important, what a healthy, successful culture looks like, what their culture looks like, and how each person can take responsibility for supporting it, growing it, nurturing it over time. We also provided and are providing e-learning as an option for those that can't go to a class because there are situations like that. So there are multiple ways for people to get connected to the culture and understand their role in that process. And we've created culture workouts, huddles that they use in their meetings to consistently go back and address the culture, educate people about the culture, get better at living their culture. And we have what we call conversation starters and culture boosts. We have 52 of them that are simple. They're just like questions like, how does our culture help our customers, right? Really easy kinds of conversations you can have individually or collectively with employees. And they're using that as well. And they've got a 2-year plan on addressing different talent management systems and processes, as well as customer journey touch points, where they know that they have certain things that are working in favor of the culture, but they know they have certain things they have to fix or change. So, for instance, they're going to change the way they recruit, some of the key things that they look for, and even who they'll recruit, because the cultural definitions kind of shift those sands a bit, right? And it'll change the way they interview. They're going to have some cultural questions that are going to be geared towards what was defined. So they're going to go through, and we did an audit for them and made recommendations, and they put together a plan to tackle each one over a period of time. And they're in the middle of changing those things so that every aspect of the way they do business supports the culture. And it's not just sitting on the shoulders of people, but the systems support the people trying to use that culture and live that culture.
So I love what you're saying, because not only did they develop it from the customer point of view, but they really thought about the implementation of it.
Yes.
And, at the Learning Network, we're an e-learning company. One of the benefits isn't just for the remote worker, it's the new hire, because they need to be indoctrinated in the culture too, and to have that e-learning available so that they can understand the culture. I can tell you for myself, I would do a culture meeting with new employees every month. So the company was a pretty good sized company. Sometimes that could be a meeting of 5 people, sometimes it could be a meeting of 20 people.
Right.
But to hear from, the lead management person that culture was important, what the culture was, why it was important, and the stories that I think are a big part of culture building.
Agreed. We actually meet once a week as a team, and every week we do a culture workout. It's just 5 minutes to 10 minutes, maybe 15 maximum, but usually 5 to 10 minutes. And it's just a quick activity or discussion that's structured around one aspect of our culture so that we all remember what's important. We're all interacting with our clients in a similar vein and way. I mean, it's an amazing thing, but it works. I actually just got a text from somebody yesterday saying, I used your system and it's incredible. It actually does work. I mean, it really keeps us focused on what's important, and we're working together better. And I look at places I've worked at before, and the kind of division that they had, the kind of problems they had occurred because they weren't focused on their culture and these types of things. And so, and they thanked me. And I thought that was just right there. I'll take it. It's a perfect way to end the day to get a text like that.
It is a great way. So I love what we've been talking about, but I want to shift gears.
Sure.
AI is a buzzword. I happen to really love AI, and depending on what software you use, but you can customize and actually put your company values right into your AI tool so that it writes things that follow and map what your company stands for, which is really cool.
Yeah.
How are you using AI with your customers now? How do you forecast where you think you might go with AI in a couple of years?
Sure. So, one of the ways we're using AI with customers, I'll give you a couple different ways. Actually, we use AI when we're building training. It's a useful tool. But I think one of the ways that we're really excited right now, and so I'm shifting gears back to culture, is we actually have an AI tool that hooks onto Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever it is you're using, that watches the meetings, not only transcribes the meetings, provides the video, but it also grades you on how well you're living your culture. Now, let me define that for you. There's two factors of it.
This is really cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it gives you coaching advice. So this is what's really cool about it. It'll first give you a basic idea of, am I creating a culture where both the organization and the individual thrive, right? Is it a healthy, successful culture? And the second thing it will do is it will take your values and behaviors that you've defined as a part of your culture, and it watches for them. And then it'll grade you and give you feedback and coaching advice on how to improve it. So, for instance, we have a value of being collaborative. And so one of the things on our system it looks for is collaboration. And it watches the meeting to see how much collaboration there is, how much back and forth are people interacting. And it'll give you feedback on that to always remind you about what you said was important and are you living up to it, right? So it's just a really powerful tool, and it's a tool meant to lift people up and lift the culture up. And so I think it's just it's a fantastic piece of technology. It's AI driven, and I love it. So it's, that's one of the biggest ways we're using it right now. We use it internally, but we use it with clients too.
It's very interesting. Is it a tool you could use like as a culture audit? Hey, let me tell you a secret. The Learning Network has come out with a new product called Breeze. And Breeze is the easiest to use course creation tool on the marketplace today. You want to look smart, you need Breeze. You want to get engagement, you need Breeze. You want to have a tool that can make you look great and will work with your LMS, you need Breeze. One of the cool things about Breeze is it's all drag and drop, all templated, super easy to be effective, but it's also SCORM based. So it can work in any LMS. And here, get this, when you want to update it, you update it in Breeze and it will automatically update every instant in any LMS that you have the course. Go to learning.net and schedule a demo today. Where maybe you could come in and read people's emails and things of that nature, or is
You
it?
could do something like that. Yes, yes, you could.
So let's now move to the future. If we chatted 2 years ago and we talked about AI, 99% of our audience or more wouldn't even know what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I would, because my first AI program I ever wrote was in 1980, but that's another story. But anyhow, where are we going to be in 2 years? What's AI going to do to business?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword. You have the people out there that say it's the end of the world, and then you have the people out there that say, oh, this is going to make the world great. And the truth is, it's going to be disruptive. And for some people, it'll make their lives easier and better. And for others, it will be difficult. I think the two things, the two things that I think about are how you choose to use the technology. Are you using the technology as a tool to support a better business environment and to support your people to be more productive? That's one way you can use it. Or are you using it as a vehicle to replace people? And I'm hoping that people do the former rather than the latter. I think we have a tendency to let technology manage us rather than us managing technology. And that's the only danger that I see with AI. I should say the only, but that's the big danger I see with AI is how people choose to use it. Just like the social networking that's out there now. We have gone down a road where the technology manipulates us to engage in certain types of behaviors because they want us to stay on the platforms longer, almost trying to create an addictive kind of a scenario, feeding you things that will keep you there, and then taking your data and selling it. There's no privacy. I actually think, and I agree with a guy named Paul Allen, who started Ancestry.com. I think, he and I have had this conversation. I think that you're seeing a new crop of technology come up where people's data and their privacy is a big concern. And all it takes is for people to switch and say, I want to use that because they're valuing me as a person and treating me with respect for all this other stuff to disappear, right? I think there's a push for responsibility with technology, and I'm hoping that it sticks, because if it does, I think we're going to go in the right direction. But I think those are the choices we have to make. Are we building it for people, or are we building it are we using it solely for profit or to replace people? And I think those are the conversations we need to have to make sure that it's actually a useful tool.
It's interesting. My first AI experience, I wrote on a computer terminal. This is before they were home computers, for a computer to play tic-tac-toe by learning from every game it played, which was a form of artificial intelligence.
Isn't that the premise of war games, the Matthew Broderick?
Yes, and this is before the movie. But what I had it do is I had it play 10,000 games itself, learn from each game, and then it would play. And then as you played with it, it got smarter and smarter and smarter. But the point that I'm making is technology keeps evolving, and almost every step they talk about this is going to kill the worker. You know, the when they started coming out with the making cars on an assembly line, you know, all of a sudden assembly lines are going to get rid of the world, you know, the industrial revolution, then the technology revolution, and the computer, the personal computer was going to destroy jobs, and this is going to destroy jobs, and nothing has ever destroyed jobs. But if I have a hope, if it enhances work so people can be more productive, I would love to see a day where most people were working 4-day work weeks, but more productively.
I agree with you. My concern is twofold. One is not so much that all the jobs are going to disappear. I don't think that's the case. I do think there are some AI companies that are built with that intent, and I think that's the difference today than we had in the past. So there is a AI company where the CEO came out and said, our job is to replace labor in the workplace, to remove labor from the workplace. I've never seen a company with that kind of a mission before. That mission concerns me. That's what I would say. I don't think that that's where it has to go. I don't think that's necessarily where it will go. But I do think you have people making different choices out there, and it'll be interesting to see what choices are made and what choices aren't made. I think that's the key. The second thing I would say that I think is important about AI is with every single one of those changes or progressions in the workplace, what you did see, even if it didn't replace jobs, is you saw disruption. People needing to get new skill sets, a lot of change. And that will be sped up, and there'll be a lot more of it going forward. And I think the one thing that is unique today compared to the past is people won't have time to sit back and relax and say, how do I stay relevant? I think that, we've talked for a long time about the lifelong learner. The truth is, careers are lasting longer. I should say, work periods are lasting longer. Meaning, if I graduate today and I'm going to retire, I'll probably work for about 50 years. And that's just expanding. And your skill set is lasting shorter and shorter amounts of time. And we're going to get to a point where your skill set might last 2 years, 3 years, which means that people in the workplace are eventually going to have to keep recreating themselves, and they're proactively going to have to focus on that, and they're going to have to focus on their career development and not leave that in the hands of someone else like their employer. I think there's a huge push for ownership and responsibility for your career. Your employer should support you, but you better own your career, because that's the engine for your retirement, and nobody else is going to do that but you.
As the world evolves with technology, there seems to be certain people that want to avoid it.
You
And
can't.
no, they can't. And if you're going to be successful at work, you better understand AI and
I
how to
agree.
use it. And I think somebody said once the best paid people in the world are going to be people who know how to write prompts for their AI tool. So we're going a little longer than most shows, but Brad, I know that people are interested in what you talked about, culture, where you're going. I know you have a great offer. Tell us a little bit more about your company, the kinds of companies you like to work with, size,
Sure.
what you do, etc.
So we are a company that focuses on a few core things. One is, how do you create strong, healthy cultures that allow both the individual and the organization to thrive? That's the first area we work in. Second area we work in is, how do you strengthen your leadership and build a pipeline for future leaders so that you're promoting the right people? Third area is creating an engaging environment and engaging your employees, employee engagement. And so we want employees to be there. We want them to do three things. Want to stay longer. Okay. We want them to give you more, provide more discretionary effort, and then be a brand ambassador. Talk well about your company when no one's looking, right? Those are three things we want to do. And then the last one is really the customer journey, creating customer loyalty. The whole concept of being a loyal brand people want to work with. They want to do more business with you. If they're going to recommend someone do business with a company, they're going to recommend yours. That's what we do. We have systems we work on, whether it's compensation, succession planning, that support all those things.
Where do you normally start?
Wow.
Or is there not normal?
I'm going to say it shifts because it depends on what's happening in the workplace. Right now, culture is huge. We're starting a lot with culture. And then I would say leadership is second. But if you asked me 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said employee engagement was the place that people started. So I would tell you right now, it's culture and leadership seem to be the big things. And I think it's because culture is starting to become the ultimate differentiator for companies. If you have a great culture, you're performing better, profitability wise, revenue wise. People want to go to work. They aren't looking for a job. They're satisfied. I mean, it's just a great differentiator. And I think leadership, because you have a lot of retirements, and because leaders are struggling today. They've got larger spans of control. They are feeling overwhelmed, too many priorities, and they can't figure out how to handle it all. So how do I really lead people in today's environment? That's a big challenge for people. So
Well, it's interesting when you think about culture, it can be consistent. Technology can change, customer needs can change, but culture is something that if you build it right, it stays consistently. And I think the winners in the future are the companies that have the best culture and the best people, the best retention of people, and have people looking and seeking them out.
I would agree. I
Yeah.
would totally agree. Yeah,
So I think people would love to know the name of your company, your URL, your special offer.
sure. The name of the company is Performance Point, and the URL would be www.performancepointllc.com. We're also on LinkedIn. You can reach us there. And the giveaway, we're going to give away.
But before you do, your
Okay.
website is performancepointllc.com. So
.com. Yes, it's got to be
people,
performancepointllc.com. You have to put it all in there.
just because
Good.
people generally are listening, I wanted to highlight that. But you have a really terrific offer.
Thank you.
So I want people to be able to hear that too, of course.
All right. Well, the offer is a culture assessment. So we will actually help you understand what your culture looks like now and the characteristics of that culture. And then you can decide whether you love it or you want to shift it. But I think it's up for a culture assessment for up to 50 people. I think it's a great tool. It gives people insight. Sometimes you find out you have a culture you love. Sometimes you find out you have a culture you don't really like. Sometimes you find out you don't have a culture, but you have lots of cultures. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I've worked with companies. I worked with a company recently that had really, depending on what department you were in, they had massively different cultures. And it was interesting because one of the problems they had was they were having conflicts between different parts of the company and silos. And the reason for it, everybody operated differently. And they wanted to operate their way and not your way. And so even internally as teams, they couldn't work it out. So it's a great tool. It gives you good insight and it'll help you figure out where you want to go from here or if you've done a great job.
So how do people reach you to take advantage of this great offer?
A couple different ways. You could reach us at that URL, performancepointllc.com, and go to our contacts page and reach out. You could reach out to me directly at Federman, Federman, at performancepointllc.com and send me an email. You could call us. I think our main number is 901-291-1580, and you could reach us there. or you can reach out to us on our LinkedIn page, because we have a LinkedIn page for Performance Point. Feel free to look us up there.
Make sure you mention Training Unleashed. And if you go to trainingunleash.net and you go to search Brad Federman and find the episode there, the details of how to reach him will be right there. Or go to our YouTube channel, Training Unleashed Network. Brad, you've been a great guest, but we always end the show with, if you had one tip to share, and it can be about anything, what would your tip be?
I'm going to give you this tip. Figure out who you are. Know yourself. Okay, be true to yourself. I think right now, kindness, we need a lot more kindness in the world. Be kind to others, and do that through living your purpose. Everyone needs to know what their noble goal is. If you really want to keep up with technology, if you really want to keep up with where society's going, the best way to do it is not through fear, not because I told you or Evan told you. It's because you know where you want to go as a person and what drives you. And you live each day with that in mind. And you will search out the tools that will help you do that, because you're passionate about where you want to go and how you want to live your life. So know yourself, be kind to others, and live with purpose. That's what I tell you.
You cheated because it's more than one, but I'm going to forgive you. But what's interesting is, and I can't remember the quote, but how things sort of happen serendipitously, where one thing and then you hear another thing. I just saw a quote that said, "True freedom is knowing who you want to be," and which I thought was really, really profound. We are all authors of our own lives. We all have complete say of who we get to be in this world. Brad, you've been a great guest. Appreciate you very much on behalf of the Learning Network. Thank you to our listeners on behalf of the Learning Network and myself, everyone. Thank you so much for paying attention today. Please check us out again, and everyone have a great day.